Hello everybody. In today's video I'll be showing you how to win king and pawn versus king. And essentially what we're trying to do here with white is we're trying to get to a position where we put our king in front of our pawn. So essentially you almost always want to bring the king first. Like let's say the pawn were further back, you always want to bring the king first. The king should be in front of the pawn at some point. And the ideal scenario is that when we bring the king up, we bring the king in front of our pawn, creating this opposition. This By creating this opposition, what we do is we create a set of key squares on b6, c6, and d6. We also create a set of key squares on b7, c7, and d7. So, if black goes backwards at all, we can simply come forward and take the key squares. However, by creating this opposition, right, we forced black into a position where they have to either go to d7 or to b7. Now, if they go to d7, we can simply grab control of this key square here on b6. So essentially king d7 from black, which is what they'll play usually. They'll go to one of these two sides. And then we play king b6. Now we've gained control of the key squares on the 6th rank. Now if they come up, we can simply get the pawn moving. And then rinse repeat. So if they come forward, we can get the pawn moving. They come back, we follow. Still keeping this opposition, right? They have to either go back or come up or run away. So essentially we push. Now they have to run away because they don't have any moves. Now you're going to get the pawn through. You've shouldered the pawn successfully and you've made a queen. And now you should know how to win this nice and easily. We have a video on that if you don't. And then we're going to show you another thing that might happen. Don't get tricked or anything. They might just bring the king back. Might throw the king back here, here. So the one thing is, once they send the king back, once the white king gets to the 6th rank, it's always winning for white. So essentially, once the white's king comes forward, black doesn't really have any way to prevent you from doing anything. No matter whose turn it is to move in this position, no matter whose turn it is to move, if it's white to move and black can somehow maintain the opposition, then it's still winning for white. And we'll show you an example of that as well. So essentially what we do here is, let's say king comes over, we push the pawn, king comes over, king comes over, king comes over. I'm just doing this just to illustrate this point that even in this scenario, with white to move, since we're on the 6th rank, we have this sort of ideal structure where we can bring the king over, and then black can bring their king as well, trying to follow you. Oh, look at that. Black creates the opposition. You might think, oh, well, how do I make progress? Well, here we can push the pawn through. Because when they bring their king back in front, when you create this c7 move, they have to come out. It's the only legal move. The only legal move is for them to come outside, and essentially now they've allowed you to force that pawn through. And so this again, no matter what they do, once white's king gets to the 6th rank, there's nothing they can do. Because you always have this idea. However, we'll show you in the next king and pawn video, when your kings are on the knight's file, next to the edge of the board with the pawn, king and pawn on the knight's file, we're going to show you exactly the winning technique and how to get that done. Also, a few more things about king and pawn endgames. Essentially, your ideal scenario is that you always want to be getting that sort of king first. Now, if you had changed it and it were black to move, let's say black goes here. Now with black to move here, right? Essentially with black to move, they can prevent you from ever getting this pawn forward by bringing the king in front on the 6th rank. And so what happens when they bring the king in front on the 6th rank, you can't really make progress. You can push the pawn, which doesn't really help you because you can never really make progress. They can just bring the king back. And if you bring your king over, they just continue to keep this opposition. And if you bring the king forward, so if you bring the king forward, again, they maintain opposition. And you can't push this pawn because now you can never get the king in front of the pawn. So essentially here, and then they bring the king back. There's a trick here, however. If black plays king d8 or king b8, they will lose the game because you will give white the opposition that they need in order to push the pawn through, and again force the king out to one of the two sides. So if you go to b8 or d8, you allow white to trick you. So you must go to c8 so that when they come forward to either b6 or d6, you can simply maintain the opposition. And now, if they push the pawn, your king is not already on c8, so you're not forced out. Instead, you go in front of the pawn, and when they come here, it's a stalemate because the black king has no legal moves. The pawn covers those squares, and the king covers those squares. So that's nice and easy. That's the drawing technique had it been a position like this with black to move, or like this with black to move. Essentially, in these kinds of positions, when it's black to move, they can simply get in front of you and get in front of the pawn. Now you push back. If you ever come forward, they maintain this opposition, and you can never make progress. Essentially here, remember, again, cannot go to b8 or d8. If you go to b8, they come. Now you come. Now, if you go this way, they'll simply step in front, and you'll end up losing because the pawn will go through and promote. Here, they can go here, and then they simply shoulder the pawn through. So that's how you're supposed to hold these kinds of positions. If you ever find yourself on the end of one of these positions, do not let white's king get into the 6th rank. Now, sometimes there's nothing you can do, right? In a position like this, when it's white to move, there's nothing you can do. This is lost no matter how you slice it. Because white's going to get the opposition here on the 5th rank, and now there's nothing you can do because you have to make a move. By making a move, you give them the 6th rank. And once white's king gets to the 6th rank, there's nothing you can do. Alright, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate you.